Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's hybrid meeting and presentation with the Los Alamos Mountaineers. Before we get started, I want to make sure everyone's aware that the presentation is being recorded. I'm Beth Courtwright, the Operations Manager at Pajarito Environmental Education Center, or PEAC, here in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and I will be the moderator for tonight's talk. I want to acknowledge first our wonderful members, our donors, and our partners like the Mountaineers for all of their generous support. For more details about PEAC programs or anything about us, visit peaknature.org. And I'll do this at the beginning now. So just a few logistics for our presentation before we get started. Our presenter tonight will be taking questions via Zoom chat and from the in-person audience. So for those of you watching from home, you can find the chat feature in the Zoom app menu bar. Type your questions to the PEAC moderator in the chat window anytime during the talk, and I'll read them during the Q&A at the end. Please remember that not everyone in the room here with us has a microphone. So there might be a delay when we're listening to the questions from the live audience, but don't worry, we'll be back on in a second, and our speaker will repeat the question for everyone to hear before answering that. After the talk, you'll get a short evaluation, a link in your email. Please take a moment to fill that out. Your input really helps us to improve future programs. Okay, without further ado, I'll pass it over to Sylvie to start the Mountaineers meeting.
Thank you, Beth. Welcome everybody to already our June summer meeting. Wow, that went quickly. So welcome to those here at PEAC and those online. All right, we have a fun agenda today, so I'll get right to it. June 25, 2024. First little item there is to let you know that our July meeting will be a little different format. We will not be here at PEAC. We will organize an event at Camp May Pavilion with a 5:30 hike and a 6:30 social with hopefully a campfire in the fireplace. Bring a dessert to share and sign up. We'll have a sign-up trip on our website to sign up for 2-minute adventure talks. So think about what you want to share, wrap it up in 2 minutes, and come share it with the rest of us. So that's our July meeting. And I'll get the mic again in a second. So I'm going to turn it to Zach Baker to do an overview, a quick tour of our Los Alamos Mountaineers website.
Great. Thanks, Sylvie. So thought we'd show some of the features of the website, just in case you haven't checked it out lately. So the front page got most relevant updates, like the monthly program, and here we are today. You must know about it. We'll keep going on. Ongoing events, and then we get to a brief summary of all the upcoming events. For instance, the Nambe Lake hike coming up on the 29th. Coming back up to the top of the screen, there's a lot of archival information, and you can go back and look at long since past events that happened here, generally at the Nature Center. This actually goes all the way back to the start of this website, which was in 2012. For more recent things, for instance, let's see if we can find what I'm sure is there. We can click on and see some information about the presentation. And for a lot of the slides, there are also videos. The Nature Center captures the videos from Zoom and puts it up. And anyway, a lot of them have videos that you can check out and relive the experience. Under climbing, probably the most useful thing for a lot of folks is the top roping calendar. This are not strictly Mountaineers events. We don't have anyone there to check safety or monitor things, but we do put up the schedule. And so all of June's up, and soon enough, we'll see July events as well. And for each of them, we have information about where it is and when it starts. So definitely check that out. On to trips, very similar with the archive. We can see all the way back. So this again goes back to 2012. You can see even farther back where it was Jan Studebaker's website, and see even more back well into the early 2000s. So just a huge amount of archival information. So in particular, if you want to lead a trip or just thinking about going on a private trip by yourself, lots of great information on historic trips and potentially who to contact to learn more about them. One of the last things is our gear loan site. So the Mountaineers do maintain quite a bit of gear that you can borrow for free if you're a member of the Mountaineers. Things like helmets and ice axes and some climbing equipment. One of our most popular things are the avalanche beacons. So if you're going out on a trip to a hut or otherwise, you can borrow a beacon and a shovel and some snow probes and get kitted out. This does assume that you know what you're doing with the avalanche beacons and have taken an avalanche course. We also have a Garmin InReach and some ice cleats. So all free to borrow if you're a member of the Mountaineers. So great value at $15 a year. And the bear kegs. That was a picture of the bear rather than the bear keg, but I think it's representative. And then finally, the calendar has all of our events on it. So you can see at a glance what's going on in the next week and the next month. So we go forward to July, see some great trips like the hike to Lake Peak and the Rubber Ducky float trip, all of which you should sign up for. And that's it from me. I'll hand it back over to Sylvie.
Thank you, Zach, very much. So that was our tour of our website. All right, Jean, our trip coordinator, is driving back from Albuquerque. So you get the B team for the trip report before our main presentation. So here I go. Trying to do justice to Jean. You doing it, Beth? Or did I? Okay. Early June, Scott Bailey led a 20-mile backpack in the San Pedro Park's wilderness with 3 participants. It looked fun. There's Tim there on the left. And there was no fire yet. 4 participants. Thanks, Tim. And a canine. Very nice. Domino the canine. All right. On June 1st, Olivia led a trip to Glorieta Baldi with 5 participants. She must have taken the picture. All right. And then Cecile went to Jicarita Peak on June 15, I think with 9 participants. Also very blue skies and some mountain sheep. And that looks very nice. There it is. Good shot. Who took that picture, Cecile? You did? All right. Good photo. Next trip was Anne Sitsangi and Juliana Fessenden went to Mount Taylor for a camping trip. And I should have given you an opportunity to tell the story, so I'm going to try to do it justice. Rough start with flooding in Grants, parking it in a car for a while. There's a car trying to cross a parking lot there. I think they closed some of the streets. Is that right? Yeah. So that was last week. But they were troopers, adventurers, and here they go. hiking and making it. Here's Barbara all the way to the sign at the top of Mount Taylor. So way to stick with it, you guys. Yeah, I was checking the radar. It was rough. You guys, good staying power. Oh, and then a couple side trips to the volcano crater and to the ice cave. So it makes for a very nice weekend. And then Bill on June 22nd led 5 participants to the Calaveras Canyon. And I'll put it on my list because I didn't know about this one. So those of you who know about it, it looks nice. All right, so those were the active trip for the month. And then what do we have coming up? The roping session that Zach just showed you the calendar for. Ellen still leading the Monday night at Pajarito Mountain up and down the ski hill. Lana doing a Nambe Lake hike on the 29th this month. Tanya has her backpack on the CDT. Early July, the 4th of July weekend. Zach is doing Lake Peak on July 20th. Sign up for that also. And then Tanya's 10-day backpack trip in Alaska. And I don't know, does anyone know if she still has a spot? Okay, probably full. Waiting list, if at all. Contact Tanya if you need information. July 27, yay, the rubber ducky. 16th annual, Zach? 16th annual. We gotta keep it going. And then beginner backpack, Lamb and Peak, combined a trip on August 2 and 4 with Jean Duert. Norbert is doing an overnight of a 14er, August 8th to 11th. And then Kathleen is doing her summer 10th Mountain Division hut trip. Waiting list available for that one. So contact her for more information. And then as Jean mentioned last month, because the provider of the Llama trips may be done. So this could be the last Llama trip with Bill early October. And then Bill again in November for his annual Moab Bike Week Bike Hike Explore. And I don't know if there's room. Contact Bill if you need that. Couple local volunteering opportunities, the July Trails Day, this time White Rock Canyon Rim Trail, and you register for those at volunteerlosalmos.org. And then the volunteer opportunity with the Los Amigos de Valles Caldera trail work days. And they have several days for those. Look on their website if you want to join those. Okay. So if you're not a member yet, like Zach reminded us, $15 for your individual annual membership. And then a repeat to make sure that we don't forget. So the July meeting will not be here. It'll be at the Camp May Pavilion with a campfire and stories around the campfire, and bring a dessert to share. And that's the plan for July. Okay, I think that's it. With that, Anne takes the mic to introduce our speakers for tonight.
Okay, thank you. I'm Anne Satsangi, and together with Juliana Fessenden, we are the program chairs putting together the speaker program for the year. Before I introduce our speakers for tonight, I just want to remind people that we're continually looking for great adventures that you want to share with your fellow Peak and Mountaineers members. So if you have a story you want to tell and a talk you'd like to share, please reach out to us. We take far and wide around the world or close to home adventures, and we're beginning to round out the calendar for 2025. So please reach out to us. So I'd like to introduce our speakers today. It's a combined online and in-person presentation. So we have Katie Goodleaf online, and she's going to be speaking to us about the Volunteer Outdoors Colorado and the water quality program she has. Katie grew up on a small island off the east coast outside New York City, but came out to Colorado in about 2017, where she has been a part of Volunteer Outdoor Colorado. And she has a dog, Rosie, and loves to get out in nature, backpacking, fly fishing, and cross-country skiing. So she is online. Also here in the room with us is our own Mike Fugate, who has been a longtime resident of Los Alamos here, coming as a student and staying on, and has, upon retiring from the lab, has gotten involved with Volunteer Outdoor Colorado and done a number of these trips and worked with Katie. So he'll be adding his own perspective as a participant. So do I hand it off to Katie to start first, or Mike? Okay, and Mike has the advance.
All right, thanks so much for the introduction. Appreciate the time and having me here tonight to talk a little bit about the volunteer program that I manage in the San Luis Valley. I want to apologize, I'm still getting over what seems like a never-ending cold, so my voice is a little scratchy, but I'm glad I could still make it here. So I figured I'd start with a little bit about my background and my role. So I am in kind of a unique partnership position, so with 3 different organizations. So with the Rio Grande National Forest, the BLM San Luis Valley Field Office, and Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado. And so basically it's a co-funded position, and I manage and develop all the volunteer programming for both federal agencies in the San Luis Valley. So I started with BOC in 2017, and that's when I was still living up in Denver. And then I moved to the San Luis Valley in 2021 to be in this particular role. I live in Del Norte. I work out of the Rio Grande National Forest Supervisor's Office, which has also just moved to Del Norte. It used to be in Monte Vista. And I love it. It's great being down here in the Valley, and I get to develop some really awesome programming, and I'm excited to share that with you all today. Next slide. So I'm sure you all have a good idea about what the National Forest does, the Forest Service, as well as the BLM. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado, since I'm directly employed through them and then kind of contracted with both the federal agencies. But VOC has been around since 1984. So this year we're actually celebrating our 40th anniversary, which is really exciting. Basically, our goal is to get people outside and involved in public land stewardship. And the organization started 40 years ago. It's just a small group of volunteers that were really interested in trail work, trail maintenance, and that's grown a lot over the past 40 years. Our main office is in Denver. We have 2 partnership offices, one in Weld County, which I manage, and then the one I directly manage down here in the San Luis Valley. We host about 100 projects all over Colorado each season. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different work types. We don't only do trail construction and trail maintenance. Now we do wildlife surveys and monitoring. We do eco restoration. We do invasive plant work. In Denver, they have a healthy communities program. So just a bunch of different opportunities to get involved in different work and give back to the outdoors that we appreciate so much. Down here in the Valley, I get to develop a lot of really unique programming because I do work directly with the National Forest as well as the BLM. And so the lake sampling program is a really good example of that. And so I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that with you all. And hopefully some of you might be interested to come out on some trips like Mike's done in the past. Next slide. So I was hoping to have my coworker, Daryl, who's the hydrologist for the Rio Grande National Forest, here tonight to explain a little bit of the background, the science, the data that's been collected for this program, but he wasn't able to make it. So I'll kind of just give you a high-level overview. And then if people are interested in digging a little deeper, I'm sure I could get some resources from Daryl and share that with the group. But basically, this is a program that was developed over 30 years ago through the USGS and the Forest Service. And the idea was that these wilderness lakes could be really great pure water samples to collect some base data from. And then over decades, if they're continually monitored, they could track climate variables, air quality changes, and all kinds of data. So that's what's been happening for the past couple decades. So the program encompasses 64 different lakes throughout a number of different states. And it's a really important program for the Rio Grande National Forest because actually 8 of the lakes are based here in wilderness areas on the Rio Grande National Forest. And the way we kind of structure this, because it is a lot of lakes to sample and they are pretty hard to get to since they're in the wilderness areas, we do have some staff members that go out and collect these samples because the trips just kind of overlap with their daily duties out in the field. That covers about half of our trips, and then we rely on volunteers to participate and help us collect the other half of the water samples to submit each year to the lab. So I want to talk a little bit about the available trips that we have this year, and that can change a little bit from year to year based on what staff duties are assigned and what's going on with staff members. But if you want to go to the next slide, I can start getting into the specifics of what we have to offer this year. So there's 3 different volunteer trips. The first 2 are on the Divide Ranger District, and these are going to be in the Weminuche Wilderness. So kind of in the Creede, Colorado area out by Rio Grande Reservoir, if you've ever been in that area. Really beautiful trips. And then the third, I think you might be a little more familiar with because it's in the southern part of the valley, and that's going to be in the South San Juan Wilderness on the Conejos Peak Ranger District. Next slide. So how do you get involved in these lake sampling collection trips? So it starts off really with just some communication. These opportunities aren't necessarily posted online for sign up like some of our other trips, just because they do require not necessarily any technical experience in water collection or sampling, but definitely a comfort level being in the backcountry on multi-day trips in high elevation, kind of rugged terrain. And so I think the first thing we want to really focus on is making sure volunteers are safe when they're out there collecting these samples. And so just emailing me or giving me a phone call so we can have a conversation about what trips are available, what might be a good fit is the first step. And then there's a little bit of volunteer paperwork. So a volunteer agreement with the Rio Grande National Forest. And then we'll do the water sampling training, and this can be done virtually or in person or a combination of either. Daryl and I put together a pretty good training video where he uses a kiddie pool and goes through the sampling process. So I think that's really helpful to see it in person. He also goes through how to fill out all the paperwork. We can provide examples of completed paperwork in the journals and things like that. So it makes a little more sense when you're learning how to collect and document these samples. And then after that, I will work with you to put together a safety and communication plan. So just so I can know when you're planning on heading into the wilderness, we'll have a check-in schedule to let me know that everything's going okay. And then when you plan on being out, again, just so safety is the first priority. So I hear from you, I know everything's okay and you made it out. And then lastly is just the equipment pickup and drop off. So we'll have to meet up so I can exchange some equipment, the water sampling bottles and things like that. And then of course, collect the samples afterwards. And I think we can be pretty creative about how these things happen. We have people that come down from Denver and do the trips, local people. Mike's done a bunch of them. So we can figure out some locations that make sense for everybody. And this year we kind of have a new requirement. Just based on safety, we want a minimum of 2 volunteers to be together for each trip. It can certainly be more than 2 people. We just don't want people going out alone just because these are remote multi-day trips. We just want to make sure everyone's being safe. Next slide. So I'll get into the details about the trips, but I guess the other thing that's important to mention is when you can go out and collect these samples. And so it's pretty much as soon as the snow melts. So we're probably about there June through early September is a good time frame. We used to go out and collect 3 samples on each lake each season, which was a lot of trips. But but they decided that was a little excessive. So we're only doing one sample per lake each season. So the first trip that's available, if you're interested in volunteering, is going to be a small pond above Trout Lake. Like I said, this is on the Divide Ranger District in the Weminuche Wilderness. This trip only has one lake to sample. The other two each have 2 lakes, so they're a little bit longer. There's 2 different trailheads you can start from depending on how you'd like to do it. It can be an out and back, or you can do it as a loop if you're with somebody else and you want to drop a car just to switch it up a little bit. And it's going to be about 10 miles each way with a 2,600 feet elevation gain. Next slide. The next one is also going to be in the Weminuche Wilderness. So this is going to be the Ute Lake samples. So there's 2 lakes to sample on this trip. It starts at the Ute Creek Trailhead, which is right past the Rio Grande Reservoir. It's a really beautiful area. I haven't hiked this specific trail, but I've done quite a bit of hiking in the area, and I highly recommend it. It's going to be a little bit longer, about 14 miles each way, very similar elevation gain. So I think for all of these trips, doing them probably on like a 2 to 3 day backpack is a great time frame. It gives you a little bit of time to explore, take your time getting in and out, and just really enjoy the trip. Next trip. And the last one is in the South San Juan Wilderness. This is with the Conejos Peak Ranger District. I think Mike's going to speak a little bit about his trip to these lakes tonight. You can start at the Three Forks Trailhead. That's probably the most common and recommended route. There is another way to make it another kind of full loop if you want to do that, but just doing it from the Three Forks Trailhead, it's about 10 miles each way. So a good 2 to 3 day backpack. And again, about 2,600 feet elevation gain. So they're all about the same elevation gain. You're kind of going up for quite a bit, but then you have a really nice downhill on the way back that you can enjoy. Next slide. So those are our lake sampling opportunities. I also wanted to just share some other volunteer opportunities that folks might be interested if you do spend time in the San Luis Valley. 2 that I think are really cool. We do a Gunnison Sage Grouse Habitat Improvement Project, which is up near Poncha Pass, and there's a really important small population of Gunnison Sage Grouse there. So we're always doing work to try and improve their habitat. Doing some trail maintenance, some invasive removal, doing a week-long backcountry trail maintenance project. Beaver Dam analog construction, that's a really interesting concept and a really new, exciting type of volunteer work that we've been doing a lot of. And that particular project's just about like 15 miles north of Chama. So not too far from New Mexico. All these opportunities are on the VOC website, and it's just volunteervoc.org. The lake sampling, like I mentioned, is not just because I like to have those conversations with folks. So if you are interested, on the next slide, I have my contact information. Feel free to give me a call, reach out via email. Even if you just want to get some more information, you're not quite sure if you want to, commit to it, that's totally fine. Just let me know and we can chat. And then if you go to the next slide, that'll just be my contact information. Great. Well, thanks so much for your time, and I'll pass it over to Mike to share his experiences out on these lake sampling trips.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. So thanks, Katie. And if you don't get that down, you can always contact me. I have Katie's contact information as well. So okay, so I was going to say a little bit about what Daryl did or what Daryl does, but Katie did a nice job of that. So I'll just get on into the trips that I've done. I've done 3 sampling trips for Katie. 2 of them have been to the Conejos with Bill Carey and Mary Francis. And then one of them last year in late August, early September, was to the Lagarito Wilderness. And I really enjoyed these trips. They're real nice backpacks to nice areas. So I do recommend them for people. They're easy to get to from Los Alamos as well. The first trip I'll talk about were my 2 Conejos trips, and you can either drive up through Antonito or drive through Chama, drive up past Platoro Reservoir and then onto the Three Forks Trailhead. This is a common place for mountaineers to go and backpack, and so I I don't know, anybody in here done any of the trips in this part of the Conejos? Sylvia has, yeah. Yeah. So here's just a Google Earth view of Platoro Reservoir. The trailhead is right here. And so just follow the trail, the Three Forks Trail up. This is the Conejos Creek, and we cross it, and then we're on the El Rito Azul Creek and Trail. And we hike up. The way we did this is we hiked up and camped at Blue Lake. And then that's about 6 miles from the trailhead, a very easy, beautiful hike. And then the first lake we sampled was south of Blue Lake, just an unnamed lake over here. And then we went back down to the trail and then hiked out to Glacier Lake and sampled that lake. And I was going to ask Jean about this. we came across a trip that she did up to Glacier Lake, and then they backpacked up here and then went over and bagged Conejos Peak. So if you were so inclined, you could easily incorporate that into a lake sampling trip. Okay, so I've done this 2 ways. One, we drove up after Mary Frances got off work one day and just camped at the Three Forks Trailhead, and then the next day went in, leisurely hiked to Blue Lake, and then the day after sampled the unnamed lake and Glacier Lake. And then when Bill Carey and I did it last year, we just drove up in Friday morning, picked up the sampling kits in La Jara, drove to the trailhead, and then hiked into Blue Lake. And then the next day went and sampled the glacier and the unnamed lake. And both trips we came out Sunday. It's very easy to do, very quick getaway into the Conejos from Los Alamos. About 2 miles in, you've got a creek crossing, the confluence of the El Rito Azul, which is in the upper part coming in right here, and the Conejos. This time of year, the water wasn't very high, but you do have to get your feet wet. And then this is our hike up the El Rito Azul after doing the creek crossing. In spite of the dead trees, it really is a beautiful hike up this little valley. And this is a little further up, getting pretty close to Blue Lake at this point. And the upper left part of this slide, our route to Glacier Lake will take us up back this direction here. I think this was last year with Bill, and so we had some nice wildflowers here. Here's a view of Blue Lake from our campsite. And this is actually also just a few feet off the Continental Divide Trail. So it just comes right through here. This is a popular lake for people to hike in and fish to as well. And one more view of Blue Lake, quite a stunning view of it, I think. I got introduced to hammock camping a couple of years ago, so this was my hammock camp right there above the Blue Lake, and you just have to be careful with dead trees, I guess. What do they say about putting up a hammock? So here's the unnamed lake, and when you go sample, they have a location, the GPS, they provide GPS locations for where they would like you to sample from. And in this case, it was this end of the lake. The outlet of the lake is here, and we actually hiked up from over here and then across this way to get back here. Then in spite of the winter of 2022, 2023, this lake was actually lower in water than it was the previous year. And it's can't really tell so much, but this is all shoreline. You could walk along here, but in the previous year, this was covered up with water. So the trip geologist had to make a bridge with some rocks for us to get far enough out into the lake to collect a proper sample. There's a way they want you to fill the water bottle. And so it was down enough that we had to do a little bit of construction. Now this is after sampling that lake, we went on to Glacier Lake, and this is just looking back down the valley, the direction we came. And it's just really stunning, this high plateau, just views everywhere. And Glacier Lake is behind me in this photograph. And so here's a view of Glacier Lake, looking back at Conejos Peak. And this is where Gene led a backpack trip to. They camped here and then went over and bagged Conejos Peak. This is the outlet of the lake. We sampled it from right here, and you'll notice that this is in August of 2022. There's no snow, but then in August of 2023, which was the wetter snow year, the last photo was taken from here looking at this outlet right here, and quite a bit more snow from the winter of 22-23 up at Glacier Lake. So after sampling, then we started heading back down this plateau, which it's still just this really amazing place to hike around. We had no issues with weather. This is 2023 when Bill and I were there. In 2022, Mary Frances and I, after we finished sampling, we started getting rained on, and then we started getting hailed on. And if you look around, there's no place for cover. We were a little bit worried what would happen if it really started hailing hard. I don't know what to do. Maybe take a climbing helmet if you're going to be above tree line like this. But fortunately, the hail let up and we just got rained on. But our route down was just down this way. So just beautiful scenery. And so the last picture was taken probably about right in here, just looking down this way. So that gives you an idea of just how vast that area is. Here's our hike out. This is the El Rito Azul, beautiful little valley in spite of the trees. One difference also between 2022 and 2023 was in 2022, there were a lot of cows in this valley. In 2023, we hardly saw any, which was welcome. Because we were dealing with that in 2022 pretty much the entire hike, except for I guess over to Glacier Lake. That was okay, but the cows were just everywhere in 2022, but we didn't have them in 2023. So that was our Conejos trip, our 2 Conejos trips, and then the trip that we did last year was to the La Garita Wilderness. And we got to do this trip because the ranger that normally does it was out on maternity leave. So was really fortunate to get to do the trip. Google says it's about 5 hours, 20 minutes to the trailhead, which Stone Cellar Guard Station and Stone Cellar Campground are sort of known places up in the La Garita Wilderness if you go up in that area. My notes say that there's 2 ways in. We took what is the long way. There's a slightly shorter way that goes a little further and then comes down. We took the shorter way out, but from Saguache, it took us 2 hours and 20 minutes to get to the trailhead. And we did stop and take pictures because it was just such a nice drive out in that caldera. But it's still a long drive out to that trailhead. Long but beautiful drive. So here's a Forest Service just diagram of the area we were at. We drove in from here down to the middle fork of the Saguache trailhead, and then took the 783 trail, crossed over, and then went off trail to right up here below Phoenix Peak. And I'll just plug Norbert's trip. He just announced it for the Mountaineers. He's going to be going in at Stewart Creek, I believe, hiking up here and then camping somewhere down San Luis Peak. And his idea was, well, we can climb the peak, or we can do people can do whatever they want. There's lots of hiking opportunities, and I will second that. There's just a lot of hiking opportunities, beautiful hiking opportunities around here. So if you're thinking about doing it, I highly recommend Norbert's trip to you in the San Luis area come August. And we were there late August, in fact, over late August into September. So we were there a couple weeks later than Norbert's going to be there, but it's still really beautiful time to be there. So, okay, we drove in across the caldera this way. past the Stone Cellar Campground, couple of creek crossings on the way to the trailhead at the middle fork of the Saguache. And then our route was going to be, so we got there, we drove from Los Alamos. We got there about 3:30 in the afternoon, and we hiked in a couple hours and made camp up the creek here. And then the next day we hiked up this red-orange route. A lot of down trees in here we had to deal with. And then all the way up in this basin, I believe this is Mashan Basin. And we camped here at 12,400 feet, just kind of below Phoenix Peak. And you can see the two lakes we're going to sample are right here. So this is part of the adventure of getting there, was a couple of creeks to ford, and early in the season it can be a real challenge. This was my Toyota pickup, four-wheel drive pickup truck. It was no real problem to get across these creeks. The trailhead ends up going in the left part of this slide, up in here, back around the corner. And here was the view from the trailhead. There were a couple of other cars there when we got there. Some people scouting, bow hunting season began in a couple of days, and a couple of fishermen, but that's all we saw at the trailhead. Real nice camping here. Start of the hike that afternoon when we got there, just headed up this valley and then around this mountain, on the other side of this mountain, just up into Mashan Basin. The next morning, we came across several impressive beaver dams. This is one of them. They were very impressive. They are hard workers. Some nice fish in these little ponds as well. And then shortly after the beaver dam, we came across this bull moose. Mary Frances spotted it. He didn't care one bit that we were there, and we just kind of watched each other for a while before going on our way and leaving him alone. We also saw deer. You know, where don't you see deer anymore, right? Deer. Yeah, that was pretty cool to see. I don't think I've seen a bull moose in the wild like that before. So this is the confluence of Benito Creek and middle fork of the Saguache Creek, and a lovely spot to just stop and have a snack and a drink of water. And we're headed up to the right in this picture. So this is the Mashan Basin that we're headed up, and our route is just basically taking us all the way up here to this triangle. That's where our camp is going to be. That's 12,400 feet. And then set up a camp there. The lakes are up here in this basin, and our plan for the next day was to hike up to this ridge and then climb that point down the saddle up to Phoenix Peak. Phoenix Peak is 13,890, I believe, something like that. So one of the high 13ers. And this is a little different route to get up to that peak than most people take. So high up in that, where we were camped, just right across the basin, was a cow moose and her calf. And they were very far, they weren't that far from our camp. And she checked us out and decided she would get out of there. And so her calf just took off running across the basin. And they made really good time. But that was also very cool to see. Just a view of our camp looking back down the valley. This is the direction we came. And so again, we're at about 12,400 right here. Okay, so yeah, as I just mentioned, our camp, we're going to hike up to U-shaped lake, then around to this upper lake, gain this ridge, and then on up here. And as I mentioned, over here, San Luis Peak is where Norbert is heading in August. So I think he's probably going to camp somewhere down in this valley, but I'm not sure. And there's just an awful lot of things to hike around here. So this is the way up to the U-shaped lake. It was just kind of straight up. And here's our first look at U-shaped lake. The sampling, they do have locations where they'd like you to sample from. I think I had to sample from somewhere out in here, and to get out here and collect it from U-shaped lake. Then the upper lake, Mary Frances, this photo is actually after we'd summited, this is down the saddle back up to Phoenix Peak. And our sample location here was about right in here. Sort of very cool basin. So you can see the little part of the lake, and then our route up to this ridge, and then we just hiked along this ridge, and so we're just below the summit of point 13,628 now. This ridge / mesa is just super impressive. If I was there another day, I would have wanted to hike out to that point. I think it all looked very doable. Maybe right in here is some sketchiness, but beyond that, it was all very cool. It would be a super nice day hike out there. So now we're on the saddle, headed up to Phoenix Peak. And there's this impressive cairn at the top of Phoenix Peak. Mary Frances is 6 foot tall, and so people had lots of building materials, so they took advantage of it and made it this huge cairn. And you can see that mesa mountain ridge that I was talking about hiking out to behind her in the photo. And so here's another look at it. The little orange star is where the trailhead is. And so we had come up the valley along here and then down the valley that direction. And I'll just mention now, if you know about Roach's, Colorado's high 13ers, Phoenix Peak is one of the peaks in his high 13er book. And he has a route from Mashin Lake. Mashin Lake is on the other side of this ridge. And he takes people across this ridge and then over here and gains this ridge on Phoenix and then hikes up to where we're at. So if you're reading his book or thinking about hiking that trail from his book, you're getting a good look at what you would have to hike up. So we finished summiting, so now we just have to make our way down lots of talus. So lots and lots of talus here. And I can't decide, maybe, I don't know if anybody knows this or not, that very well might be San Luis in the background, but I'm not sure. It could be off this way, just out of the picture, but it's pretty darn close. Sorry, I don't remember that from last year. Making our way back down the ridge to sample the lakes. So, okay, so after we finished sampling the lakes, then the next day we're going to take the yellow route out. And so we go across the basin. This is about where we saw the moose were kind of up in here, and then they just took off running down this direction. They made a lot better time than we did. But this is Mashin Lake, and then this orange arrow is showing the route that Roach has in his book that I just described. So you go across, gain the ridge, and then head on up to Phoenix Peak. And just for orientation, Creed is actually back down here for people that have been out in this area. So the plan was head over to Mashin Lake and then continue following this up. This is Lagarita Peak, 13,710, so another pretty high 13er that would be worth climbing. So Mashin Lake kind of up close, very pretty. These alpine lakes are so nice. So just after leaving Mashin Lake, we're headed up to this top of this cliff band, these cliffs here. And we're going to be hiking on top of those. Does that remind anybody that's hiked in the Pecos of anything? How about Trail Riders Ridge? Trail Riders Ridge? Trail Riders Wall, thank you. Yeah, Trail Riders Wall. Reminded us of that immediately. It was really cool up there. And so our route is going to be to work our way over here and then up. And so just another look down the valley. This is, we came from down in here. Our route up was across this direction. Okay, just, right. So we are just now getting right up here. This is where we're about to head. get on top of that wall. And that, to me, just topping out. This is Lagarita Peak, and my memory says, yes, you could go up this way. It might be a little dicey right here near the top. This route over here on this ridge, I think that was really straightforward, no problem. Gain the ridge and then hike over to the top of Lagarita if you were so inclined. I think it would be a very fun thing to do. And so this is the view from on top of that wall, that ridge. It was really neat. And one more view of this area. So we're about to head down off this ridge down this direction in next photos. So we do have a trail here. It's easy hiking. That's about to come to an end. So Mary Frances has a smile on her face because we just made it through all these willows. The arrow in the top of the screen shows our way down. That was all fine, but then, and there was something of a trail at times, but then we get into these willows and it was just a maze to try to get through them. They were tall. At one point I finally made it through and I look back, I couldn't see 6 foot tall Mary Frances. And it's like, where are you? And she she held up her ski pole and it's like, okay, work your way this direction. But it was just a real thrash to get through these willows. But we did it. And the last picture was taken from about right here, looking back up this direction. So now we're getting ready to head across, a little more bushwhacking, and we're going to head all the way across over here. This is Benito Lake. Bushwhacking, but not as much or as bad as what we just did. And so, yeah, so we're headed across this way up into this high valley. There is a trail that goes up this saddle and connects to other trails, but we were headed down Benito Creek, and there is supposed to be a trail. At times, I guess there was a faint trail. Lots of down trees, a lot more bushwhacking. So very, very slow going. But we did finally make it to camp, and it was still early in the afternoon, no night hiking. And this would be our last camp. I guess we had a couple of hunters come by about sunset. They'd been out scouting all day long. They were bow hunting, and a couple of hunters came by and chatted with us for a little bit. And we thought our adventure was over. We're driving on this road. We were driving on this road here. It's going to take us to Stone Cellar. And somewhere about in here, a guy in camo comes. He's running down the slope and waving his hands. And it turns out he had a dead battery. He was about 5 miles back this direction, and he had walked out. He was prepared for being up there. He had all kinds of water. He had all kinds of food. He just didn't have anything to self-jump his own battery. And he said as soon as he turned it over and he had a dead battery, he knew he had forgotten his jump battery at home. And so we gave him a ride. It was about an hour drive. This road was steep, and I remember looking at it from back here. I have a manual transmission, and all I could think of was, I've got to put him in the back of my truck, and oh man, I don't want to stall this thing going up this hill. But fortunately, we didn't have any problems. Just went right up it okay, did nice and slow. But it was about an hour drive back to drop him off and then come back down to this point. And so this is our way back down. So that was the last adventure. Then we took the long way or the short way out from this point. So yeah, that was our adventures, lake sampling in the Conejos and the Lagarita Wilderness. And so with that, I'll say thank you very much and take any questions for me or for Katie. Thanks.
Okay, any questions in the room first before I go to these? Yeah, in the center.
So the question is, can I comment at all about the data that we are collecting? They're collecting dissolved gases, and there's quite a few of them in the report that. So Daryl sent Katie and I a report from another ranger district, and I looked through that. The two things they're particularly interested in are, you probably guess this, acidification of the lakes, and then sort of nitrogen in the lakes. And that was a surprise to my cryptgeologist, Bill. He didn't expect that, but I guess it makes sense. Nitrogen from agriculture being carried over by dust, and then they're worried about algae growth in the overproduction of algae growth. There's all kinds of elements that they're sampling for. Sulfur dioxide, of course, is one, but I don't. I thought about adding a little more statistics to the talk, but I thought better of it. So, yes. So the question is Del Norte actually in the San Luis Valley? That's a good question. I don't know if Katie is still there. If it's not, it's just on the western edge of it, I guess, wouldn't it be? It's just a little further
Del Norte
out
is
west.
like kind of right in the middle of the San Luis Valley.
Okay.
It's about 45 minutes southeast of Creed, maybe 45 minutes west of Alamosa.
Think of San Luis Valley, I think Alamosa,
Yeah. Yeah. So the comment was when I think about the San Luis Valley, I think of the Crestone, of Alamosa, maybe Monte Vista. That would be on the western side of you're thinking of that sort of the gun barrel part of the valley, right? I guess Katie's saying it actually extends further west than what?
Yeah, so it's 6 counties, pretty much between the Sangres and the San Juans, and it'll go as north as Poncha Pass and then right to the border of New Mexico. So it's a pretty big area.
Uh-huh. Oh, the question is, what happened to the trees in the first photos? I think bark beetle has gotten all of them. I think that's what bark beetle or some cousin of the bark beetle. And Katie, do you have any other insight?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think it was about between 10 and 15 years ago, this area got hit really bad. And I believe they say after about 10 years is like the fall rate. So that's another huge part of what we spend volunteer time doing, is just constantly clearing down trees from the trail. And obviously there's still a ton of standing dead. So it's a bummer to see, but just kind of part of the cycle, unfortunately.
people fall with bark beetle.
So the question is it bark beetle alone, or is it reduced rainfall with the bark, in addition to the bark beetle? I don't know, but so lack of moisture certainly would be playing into the tree's weakness, which would expose them to the bark beetle. Any tree experts in the audience? You have
Okay.
to live with the statistician's explanation.
All right, might switch to one question that came in online. How many samples do you collect or hope to collect each season?
So 1 from each lake. So 8 samples total we'll send out each season. Up until the past 2 years, it had been 3 samples per lake. So that was 24 samples we were sending out, which was a ton of work. So it's nice to only have the 8 samples, which isn't necessarily 8 trips, because like you saw, some of the trips include 2 lakes.
You kind of started to touch on this. When did you start taking this data?
The program started in 1993.
And more data questions. Is the data publicly available anywhere?
So Daryl actually, this year he's been on a detail working for the Washington office, kind of heading this program, and he's tasked with collecting all of this data and really compiling it in a meaningful way. And that's what I was hoping he could present some on. I know he's still like in the process. There's a lot to do, but he certainly was hoping to present some of what he's starting to find. But couldn't be here today, but I can definitely ask him if he has some resources that I can send over if y'all are interested in digging a little deeper beyond my knowledge.
Yeah, if anyone wants that, you can respond to any of the emails you got for tonight's, confirming tonight's registration, and I can connect you or ask Katie for more of that. Any other questions in the room? Keep watching online as well. But if that's all we have, I just want to thank Mike and Katie again for sharing your knowledge of this program with us tonight. Everybody, please remember to watch out for the quick survey coming to your email. And then, yeah, check out the Peak website for more great summer programming coming up. Our summer family evenings are ongoing right now every Wednesday night through the summer. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing everybody at next month's Mountaineers meeting up at Camp May.
And thank you, Beth, for all your help putting this presentation together.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. And thanks, Katie, for joining us from afar. We hope you feel better.
Thanks so much.
All right, everybody have a good night.